Look, some people think names don't matter, but they're wrong. Dead wrong. A name is literally the first thing people hear about you. And if you think that doesn't shape their entire perception, you're living in some fantasy world. Anyway, make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy my stories, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. I'm Diana, I'm 27, and I've always understood how the world actually works. When I divorced Carson 3 years ago, keeping his last name, Richardson, wasn't about sentiment. It was about survival. Richardson opens doors. Richardson gets callbacks. Richardson doesn't make HR managers do that little pause where they're trying to figure out how to pronounce Martinez without sounding racist. My fiancé, Tanner, never really got that. He's one of those intense guys who takes everything personally, especially anything involving his Polish heritage. Don't get me wrong, I love that about him. The passion, the way he throws himself completely into everything he cares about. He's successful in finance precisely because he's so driven and focused. But sometimes that intensity can be exhausting. We'd been engaged for 6 months, wedding planned for spring, everything falling into place perfectly. I'd spent weeks coordinating vendors, managing the guest list, making sure every detail was Instagram worthy. The venue was gorgeous. My dress was a dream, and Tanner had been surprisingly hands-off about most of the planning, which I appreciated. He trusted my taste, my vision. That Tuesday morning at the county clerk's office should have been routine paperwork. Just getting our marriage license application started, nothing dramatic. The clerk, this middle-aged woman with tired eyes, was going through the standard questions when she asked, "And will you be changing your name, Miss?" "No, I'm keeping Richardson," I said, not even looking up from the form I was signing. The clerk paused. "You mean until the wedding?" "No, after 2. Now she looked confused, glancing between Tanner and me. I could feel him tense beside me, but I figured he was just being his usual overthinking self. "Richardson is your ex-husband's name," the clerk asked carefully. "I know. So you'll be Vanessa Richardson even after marrying me." Tanner's voice had this edge I'd never heard before. Obviously, Richardson sounds so much better than Kowalski. No offense, babe, but Polish names are so harsh. The silence in that little government office was deafening. The clerk shifted in her seat, suddenly very interested in her computer screen. Tanner's pen had stopped moving entirely. "You want to keep your ex-husband's name because it sounds better than mine." His voice was deadly quiet. "Don't be dramatic, it's just aesthetics. Richardson flows better. It's more professional." I was getting annoyed at having to explain something so obvious. "You know what I mean? Kowalski is so ethnic. Richardson opens doors." The casual way I said it, like I was discussing the weather, seemed to hit him wrong. The clerk was practically squirming now, but I didn't care. This was reality, not some feel-good movie where everyone pretends discrimination doesn't exist. "I see," Tanner said in that terrifyingly calm voice he gets when he's really angry. "Don't sulk, it's not personal. Keeping your ex-husband's name instead of taking mine isn't personal. God, why are men so sensitive about names? It's 2024. I was getting frustrated with his inability to see the bigger picture. This isn't about feminism. You're choosing your ex's name over mine because it sounds better. Would you rather I hyphenate Richardson Kowalski? That's a mouthful." He signed where he needed to sign and stayed quiet for the rest of the appointment. I tried to fill the silence by chattering about wedding planning, the flowers we still needed to finalize the menu tasting next week. But he barely responded. His jaw was set in that stubborn way that meant he was being ridiculous about something. That evening, I could tell he was still brooding. Tanner has this way of going internal when he's upset, like he's running calculations in his head. Usually I can coax him out of it, but this felt different, heavier. "Are you seriously going to pout about this all night?" I finally asked as we got ready for bed. "I'm not pouting." "Then what? You've barely said 10 words since we left the clerk's office." He turned to face me, and there was something in his expression I couldn't read. "Do you hear yourself sometimes? What's that supposed to mean? Ethnic. Harsh. You called my family name harsh and ethnic like it's something shameful." "I didn't say shameful. I said practical. There's a difference." I was getting tired of this conversation. "Look, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but we both know how the world works. Richardson has been good to me professionally. Why would I give that up? For your husband, for our marriage, for starting fresh together. That's very romantic, but I have a career to think about. Clients who know me as Richardson, a reputation built under that name. A reputation you built while married to another man. That stung, and I felt my temper flare. That's not fair. I worked my ass off to build my client base. Carson had nothing to do with my success. But you'll keep his name forever. It's not about him anymore. It's about me. Tanner stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. Right, of course it is. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. No note, no text explaining where he'd gone or when he'd be back. I tried calling around 10, but it went straight to voicemail. By lunch, I was annoyed. We had a cake tasting scheduled for Thursday and a final walkthrough at the venue on Friday. His disappearing act was going to mess up our timeline. When he finally came home that evening, something had shifted. He wasn't angry anymore. That might have been easier to handle. Instead, he seemed distant, detached, like he was looking at me from very far away. "Where were you all day?" I asked as he hung his keys on the hook by the door. "Thinking. About us, the wedding, everything." I tried to read his face, but he'd gone into that locked down mode he sometimes used at work. And I think we need to postpone. Aha, postpone. The word came out sharper than I intended. "Tanner, we've already put deposits down. The invitations went out last month. You can't just postpone a wedding 3 months before because you're having feelings about my name. It's not about your name, Diana. It's about what your name represents, which is that you'd rather be connected to your ex-husband than to me, that my heritage embarrasses you, that you think my family's identity is something to be ashamed of." I felt my patience snap. "Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. It's a name. It's not that deep." "It's not that deep," he repeated slowly. "Right." Over the next few days, Tanner became a stranger. He'd come home from work, eat dinner in silence, and spend the evening in his office or reading. When I tried to talk about the wedding, he'd nod and give non-committal responses. When I tried to bring up the name issue again, he'd just say we could discuss it later. I started checking his phone when he was in the shower, but there was nothing obvious. A few texts with his brother about work stuff, some group chat with his college friends about someone's birthday. Nothing about me or our fight. But I could feel him pulling away, and instead of making me want to fix things, it made me angrier. I was done walking on eggshells around his oversensitive ego. If he wanted to throw a tantrum about something so stupid, fine. But I wasn't going to beg. A week after our fight, I found out exactly how serious Tanner had been about postponing. The florist called me at work. "Hi, Diana. I just wanted to confirm the cancellation of your wedding arrangements." "I'm sorry, what cancellation?" "Your fiancé called yesterday and canceled the order. He mentioned you'd be getting a full refund since we haven't started the arrangements yet." My stomach dropped. "He canceled our flowers?" "Yes, and he asked us to coordinate with the other vendors about timing. I hope everything's okay." I hung up and immediately called David's bridal. Canceled. The photographer canceled. The venue. Mr. Kowalski called Monday morning, the venue coordinator explained. He was very polite about it. Said there'd been a change of plans and you'd need to postpone indefinitely. Since you're more than 6 months out, we were able to refund everything except the initial deposit. By the time I got home that evening, I was shaking with rage. Tanner was in the kitchen making dinner like nothing had happened. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I screamed the moment I walked through the door. He looked up calmly from the stove. "I assume the vendors called. You canceled our wedding. Our entire wedding without even talking to me. I told you I thought we should postpone. Postpone doesn't mean cancel everything, doesn't it?" He turned off the burner and faced me. "Diana, be real. When you say postpone, what you mean is delay until I get over being upset about your name. But I'm not getting over it. So you just decided for both of us?" "I decided for me. Everything I canceled, I paid for. The flowers, the venue, your dress, the photographer, all of it." The financial reality hit me like ice water. Tanner had paid for almost everything. My contributions had been minimal. Some decorations, part of the catering deposit, maybe $1,000 total. "You can't do this. You can't just take away our wedding because you're having a tantrum." "I'm not taking away anything. I'm protecting myself." "From what?" "From marrying someone who thinks my heritage is something to be embarrassed about, someone who'd rather be tied to her ex-husband than to me." "That's not what this is about." "Then change your name?" The words hung between us like a challenge. I felt my jaw clench. "No." "Then we don't have anything else to discuss." "Fine." I was so angry I could barely see straight. "You know what? Maybe this is for the best. Maybe I'm finally seeing who you really are." "And who am I, Diana?" "Controlling? Manipulative? Using money to get your way because you can't handle that I have my own opinions." Something flickered in his eyes, hurt maybe or disappointment. But his voice stayed level. "I'm going to Japan next week. Solo trip. When I get back, I'd appreciate it if you found somewhere else to stay." I laughed, but it came out harsh and bitter. "You're not serious." "I leave Thursday, 2 days. You're going to throw away 3 years over a name." "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that." That night, I barely slept. This had to be a bluff. Tanner was too invested in our relationship, too practical to actually walk away over something so trivial. He'd cool off in Japan, realize he was being ridiculous, and come back ready to compromise. But Wednesday morning, I woke up to find him packing. Not frantically, not emotionally, just methodically folding clothes and placing them in his suitcase like he was going on any other business trip. "This is insane," I said from the doorway. "Maybe? I'm not changing my mind." "I know. So that's it? You're just giving up?" He paused in his packing and looked at me. "Diana, what exactly am I giving up? A woman who thinks my name is too ethnic for her professional image. Someone who'd rather keep her connection to her ex-husband than build something new with me. It's not about Carson. Isn't it you divorced him 3 years ago, but you're still Richardson, still carrying his identity because it serves you better than carrying mine?" "That's not fair." "No," he said quietly, "it's not." When his Uber arrived Thursday morning, I was still in bed listening to him move around the apartment. Part of me wanted to get up to say something that would fix this, but the bigger part of me was furious that he was making me feel like the bad guy when I'd done nothing wrong. The front door closed with a soft click, and then he was gone. The first few days, I convinced myself this was temporary. Tanner would realize he was being dramatic and come home ready to apologize. I even started looking forward to it. The makeup sex would be incredible, and he'd probably feel so guilty about the wedding vendors that he'd let me plan an even better celebration. But then the social media storm started. Someone, I never found out who, had screenshotted some of my old Facebook posts from right after my divorce. Posts where I talked about keeping Richardson for Piedmont, professional consistency. Posts where I joked about finally having a name that didn't require spelling lessons. Posts that, when viewed together, painted a picture I hadn't intended. The wedding shaming groups picked it up first. "Bride refuses to take fiancé's name because it's too ethnic," was the headline that started making rounds. The comments were brutal. "Imagine being this racist and not even realizing it. Polish names are harsh, girl, check yourself. Richardson really said Kowalski sounds ethnic, like that's a bad thing. The audacity. This is why I don't trust people who keep their ex's name." Red flag central. By Friday, it had spread to Twitter. Someone had found more context, that Tanner had canceled the entire wedding and gone to Japan alone. The internet loves a good comeuppance story, and apparently I was the villain. My work colleagues started looking at me differently. Not openly hostile, but there were fewer invitations to lunch, fewer casual conversations by the coffee machine. In client meetings, I caught people studying my face like they were trying to reconcile the professional woman in front of them with a viral story they'd read online. My friend group began to fracture. Vanessa, who was supposed to be my maid of honor, called me crying. "Diana, people are asking me if I knew, if I supported what you said. I'm getting dragged into this. It's being blown out of proportion. You know me. You know I'm not racist. But you did say his name was too ethnic, right? That's what people are saying." I said it was harsh. There's a difference. Is there? The doubt in her voice cut deeper than the strangers online. These were my friends, people who'd known me for years, and they were questioning everything about who I was, based on one conversation, taken out of context. My father called me from Phoenix, his voice tight with disappointment. "Mija, what is this?" "I'm hearing about you and names. Dad, it's not what it sounds like. You told your fiancé that Polish names are too ethnic. You whose grandfather couldn't speak English when he came to this country. That's different." "How is it different?" I couldn't answer that. Couldn't explain the distinction I felt so clearly, but couldn't articulate. My heritage was personal, private. Tanner's was, I don't know, more obvious, more foreign sounding. "I'm ashamed of you," my father said quietly, and hung up. Even Carson reached out. My ex-husband, who I hadn't spoken to in over a year, sent me a text. "Heard about the wedding drama. For what it's worth, I always thought you should change your name back after we divorced. It's weird that you're still Richardson." The man whose name I fought to keep was telling me to give it up. Tanner's social media post from Japan showed him looking genuinely happy. Not the forced happiness of someone trying to prove a point, but the relaxed contentment of someone who'd made the right choice. He was eating incredible food, visiting temples, meeting other travelers. In one photo, he was laughing with a group of people at what looked like a traditional inn, and I felt something twist in my chest that I didn't want to examine too closely. 2 weeks into his trip, I was still refreshing his Instagram, obsessively, still jumping, every time my phone buzzed, in case it was him calling, to say he was coming home early. But the calls never came. Instead, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Keisha Tanner's friend from college. He asked me to coordinate with you about picking up his things. When would be a good time?" The reality hit me then. He wasn't coming back. Not to the apartment, not to me, not to the life we'd been building. This wasn't a dramatic gesture or a cooling off period. This was over. When Keisha came by the following Saturday, she was polite but cool, professional. She had a list of Tanner's belongings and moved through the apartment efficiently, packing his books, his clothes, his coffee maker that I'd never learned how to use properly. How is he? I asked as she folded his winter coats. He's good, really good actually. Is he coming back to town soon? He's back, has been for a few days. She didn't look at me as she said it. He's staying with friends while he looks for his own place. He'd been back for days and hadn't contacted me, hadn't even driven by the apartment. I was completely erased from his life. 3 months later, I was still Diana Richardson. Still single, still bitter about how everything had played out. The viral story had died down, but the professional damage lingered. I'd lost 2 major clients who'd cited cultural fit concerns, and my boss had started giving the high-profile projects to other people. I'd had to move back in with my parents because I couldn't afford the apartment rent on my own. My mother kept making pointed comments about names and respect and how she'd raised me better than this. My father barely spoke to me. The worst part was running into Tanner at a coffee shop downtown. He was with a woman, not a rebound, but someone who looked settled, comfortable with him. She had dark hair and an easy laugh, and when the barista called out their order, I heard her last name Kowalski. She'd taken his name already, even though they were clearly just dating. The name I'd thought was too harsh, too ethnic, too professionally limiting. She wore it like it was something to be proud of. They looked happy together. Not the forced happiness of people trying to prove something, but the genuine contentment of 2 people who actually liked each other, who respected each other. I sat in my car afterward, gripping the steering wheel and trying not to think about what I'd thrown away. Not Tanner specifically, though losing him hurt more than I wanted to admit, but the life we could have had, the partnership we could have built. But I still couldn't bring myself to regret keeping Richardson. It was my name now, the identity I'd built my career on. Changing it would feel like admitting defeat, like saying everyone who'd criticized me was right. My therapist, because everyone insisted I needed therapy after the incident, kept pushing me to examine my choices, my values, my relationship with identity and belonging. But I resisted. I knew who I was, what I believed, what mattered to me professionally. Some people just couldn't handle a woman who understood how the world actually worked, who made practical choices instead of romantic ones, who refused to apologize for protecting her own interests. Look, maybe I could have been more diplomatic about it. Maybe I should have had that conversation with Tanner privately instead of at the clerk's office. But the fundamental issue remained the same. Richardson served me better than Kowalski ever would have. And if Tanner couldn't accept that reality, if he needed a wife who would sacrifice her professional identity for his ego, then we were never going to work anyway. I tell myself that most nights. Usually I even believe it.